thanks to many of you in the room, we have more data on Africa than we've ever had before. We've increased the number of hotels working with us in Africa by over 20% in the last year, and we're now almost 1,000 hotels. So I'm really excited to share with you our most comprehensive ever analysis of African hotel performance. And the third reason I'm really excited is because today I get to share the stage with Philippe Gauguier, who will be coming up shortly. And Philippe is a very good friend and also in Extenso, very good partners for STR in France and Francophone Africa. So I'm looking forward to sharing the stage with him, and certainly I think you'll be looking forward to it too, because he undoubtedly has better French than me, and certainly better insights on the North African hotel market. So Philippe, thank you for joining me. Very good. And so what I'd like to cover with you, and if you want to take a seat, what I'd like to cover with you today is really the following agenda items. I'm going to start with brands on the rise, which is really a global mega trend, and I think it's very applicable to Africa, and certainly North Africa. And then onto an African overview, dip across to West Africa, then across to East Africa, up to Egypt, and then hand over to you, Philippe, for North Africa, if that makes sense.
Yes, of course.
Very good.
Definitely.
Good. So firstly, brands on the rise. I think there aren't many investment conferences that I've been to across the world in the last decade where there hasn't been some amount of complaining or people being upset with hotel brands, and particularly international hotel brands, with a lot of the views being that they're maybe too expensive, they don't really act in the interests of the owners. Well, I always believe in the importance of looking at data to really see what's going on. And I think that this graphic is a really fantastic one, because what it shows you is every single hotel that's opened up in the world in the last 50 years, about 100,000 hotels, and all the blue dots are branded hotels, all the orange dots are independent hotels, and you can see up until about 1998, that bar on the bottom there was about opening at an equal rate. But ever since then, in the last 20 years, more and more branded hotels have been opening up than independent hotels. So the facts speak for themselves. Owners, developers have been choosing branded hotels instead of independent hotels. Now, do I think that means independent hotels have no place? Obviously not at all. There are always fantastic independent hotels. And certainly when it comes to the things that brands used to be about, consistency of product, the brand promise to consumers, I think that's less relevant these days. Many independent hotels produce fantastic product, and certainly online guest reviews have taken away the need of a brand for customer quality promise. But what brands are all about are about scale, they're about technology, and they're about procurement power. And I think it's hard to ignore in the industry that we operate in. So just to demonstrate that, here you can see the proportion of branded to independent hotels across the world 10 years ago. Everywhere but the US, there were more independent hotels than branded hotels. Skip forward 10 years, and you can see there's been a huge change. So that's percentage point change in branded hotels. And you can see here in the Middle East and Africa, up 8 percentage points. So a huge switch towards branded hotels. So onto what I think is my most exciting section. So just quickly, Africa, 2018, a fantastic year. Demand for hotel accommodation grew the fastest in Africa out of anywhere in the world. So over 6% growth there. And this for me is something I personally have spent a lot of time on in the last couple of weeks. And I've gone through and looked at all the different markets that we can report on in Africa for the first time. And so very proud to share this. And it shows you some of the major gateway cities across Africa split between what I've categorized as low occupancy, medium or decent occupancy, and high occupancy. And so just to touch quickly on it, you can see over there where we are here in Morocco, some pretty good high occupancy markets. You move up north to Tunisia, Algeria, some decent occupancy still recovering. Across to Egypt, a mix between those business destinations that attract leisure too, like Cairo and Alexandria, some very high occupancies there, but certainly in the more traditional resort locations, Luxor, Sharm el-Sheikh, still a long way from where they used to be before the terrorist attacks and the unrest in Egypt, and so a long recovery to come there. I think really interesting to look at, and it's interesting to look at then in the context of occupancy and rate, which will be the next slide, is when you go down into sub-Saharan Africa, both on the east and the west, there aren't many high occupancy markets. And in a way, that's not a surprise, because these are very much frontier markets that are really more business destinations than they are leisure destinations at the moment. So there is going to be a natural cap on the occupancy that hotels can achieve in that market, because not many people do want to stay in them on a Friday or a Saturday, unless they need to be there for business. So I think huge potential in those markets in the future as they learn to grow the diversity of their demand base. But at the moment, they certainly do have that cap on their occupancies. And then as you go down further south to South Africa, my home country, you can see occupancies go up again a bit more leisure demand, particularly in places like Cape Town. In terms of rate, here's obviously a very interesting picture. And just think back on what we saw on the occupancy side, because there isn't necessarily a correlation at all. Over here in Morocco, particularly in Marrakesh, some of the highest rates in the continent. Fantastic performance of the hotels in this region. And moving across to Tunisia, to Algeria, some great performance there too. I think really interestingly looking at Egypt, it's interesting to see how low the rates are there in US dollar terms, even though there's been fantastic growth. And that's something that I'll touch on in a second. But then, I think most importantly interesting, you go down into sub-Saharan Africa, both on the east and the west, and you can see most markets operating there either at a very high rate or at least a decent rate. And that goes back to them being frontier markets, still relatively limited hotel supply, and certainly when people are traveling there for business, they're willing to pay the premium for that product. A few exceptions, particularly some markets where there's a lot of supply coming into the market, most notably Nairobi, but generally decent occupancy all around. And then as you go down into Southern Africa, particularly South Africa, rates do drop, and that's because that market is much more domestic demand, lower rated domestic demand, particularly a lot of government business that goes into the hotels there. Cape Town being an exception with high international tourism. I won't spend long on this. This is just ranked RevPAR by destination. I think unsurprisingly in the top left, and this is in order from highest to lowest, it is those resort island destinations that are achieving the highest RevPARs. I think interestingly when you go beyond that, it's right where we are here today, Marrakesh, that has the highest RevPAR on the continent in Africa at the moment. Won't go through all the others, but certainly lots of opportunity there on that slide. This has changed over the last year, from 2017 to 2018, change in RevPAR, and you can see in the large, a very positive picture for the continent as a whole. Really, the only difficulties really being in that southern bit of Africa where, as was mentioned earlier, South Africa had a pretty tough year with the recession, and a lot of opportunity to recover from that going forward. So just quickly onto West Africa, which really should probably be entitled down and up, not up then down, because it is certainly a story of recovery over the last 2 years. And I'll touch briefly on Lagos and Nigeria, which, ever since 2014 had a real dip in performance, underpinned by a huge number of terrorist attacks, Boko Haram in the region, as well as a decline in oil price and economic performance. And we've really seen a strong recovery, particularly in 2018, as perceptions of safety have returned, oil prices have recovered, and economic performance has recovered with that. So certainly a strong year in 2018, and hopefully that will continue into 2019. Senegal's a really interesting market. It's a market we've not really been able to cover particularly well until now. And I think the story of Senegal is a mix of recovery because even though there weren't really any major terrorist attacks there, the whole of West Africa was impacted by the terror attacks that took place in 2015 and 16. And so there's been a lot of recovery there since that. I think more interestingly is the investment in infrastructure going on there, and the long-awaited international airport, which eventually opened up at the back end of 2017, which took the capacity of the airport and increased it 5 times, so 5 times bigger than the old international airport. The goal was to take it from being 1 million arrivals to 3 million arrivals in 2018. I'm not sure what the final number has ended up being, but I'm sure that it's been significant growth. And certainly the plan is for, their plan is for Dakar and Senegal to be the hub for West Africa. So really positive demand drivers there. Obviously, some supply coming with that, particularly in 2020. We expect to see some supply coming into that market. But as we all know, there are delays with this, and so I don't foresee that being a problem in the next year or two in terms of performance. Rather interestingly, are surprised to find this out, but Dakar will host the Olympic Youth Games in 2022, which you wouldn't think is that big a thing, but it was hosted this year in Buenos Aires and had a big impact on the hotel market there. So that's certainly an event for the market to look forward to. Just on to East Africa. And I think the East African story is, the biggest story there is all about Addis and the ongoing investment in that city and indeed country. And we've seen that demand has grown very strongly in the last 3 years. Supply growth has slowed down, the teal bar, and we've seen very strong demand growth, which is driving RevPAR up to over 10% RevPAR growth in 2018. So very strong performance for the hotels there. And when we look at what the drivers for that are, I'll come back to that, is obviously one of the biggest things is Ethiopian Airways. So I think they've flown a bit under the radar for the while, especially for me, but they've recently reached the point where they are now the biggest sub-Saharan hub for flights across sub-Sahara, overtaking Dubai. They're in the middle of a 15-year strategic plan to be the hub for sub-Saharan Africa, and I think they're clearly doing incredibly well with that. Arrivals to the region have pretty much doubled over the last 5 years, so I think up 85% to 2017, and I'm sure we'll be up 100% by the end of 2018. Addis is also what I like to think is the Brussels of Africa. It's the headquarters of the African Union, and there's also a lot of NGOs that have set up their headquarters there. So clearly a lot of strong fundamental demand going into that market, which is helping hotels. Very quickly on Rwanda, it's a new market that we've been able to cover for the first time, Kigali. We don't have year-on-year comparisons yet, but it's interesting to see how, I think two things to point out here. You know, obviously the occupancies, as I said about those business destinations, are not particularly high. And you can see here they never really get much above 50%, but it's a very high-rated market, around that $150, and there isn't much discounting going on in that market. Even in those low occupancy months, hoteliers are keeping their rates up. Just quickly onto Egypt then. I think anybody who's been looking at hotel performance statistics across the country, across the continent for the last 3 or 4 years would have seen huge annual increases in RevPAR in Egypt. And you can see here for 2018, pretty much every single market showing these phenomenal percentages growth in RevPAR. And it's obviously a good thing, but it's also easy to forget the circumstances around that growth. And there's really two things that have been driving that. One is recovery from a very low base, and secondly, the devaluation of the Egyptian pound. You can see here there's been 5 years of growth in Egypt, so significant growth, and actually 2018 isn't as significant as what we saw in 2017. But I think when you go back and look at the absolute numbers, and this shows you RevPAR back at the previous peak in 2008 in Egyptian pounds and US dollars, and compares it all the way through to 2018. Phenomenal growth in Egyptian pounds. This is Cairo and Giza, more than doubling. But the reality is in US dollar terms, it's still some 20-30% below. So I think you'll continue to see the growth in Egyptian hotel performance, because it remains still a relatively attractively low-cost destination for tourism, certainly from Europe and many other places around the world. And certainly the same applies to the Red Sea resorts, Sharm el-Sheikh, now only at a $33 RevPAR, which is still very low. I remember not so long ago it was sitting at $9, so the only way was obviously up from there. And with that, I would like to hand over to you, Philippe. Thank you very much for being patient.
I do thank you, Robin, for your invitation. I thank you for this partnership we have together in sharing data in those North Africa countries. I would like to thank you also, the Smith and Lanit, for their support in helping us in getting data in Morocco, and also the Ministry of Tourism of Tunisia, who is helping us also to developing our statistics. And of course, it's for more accurate data we can have with STR in those countries. And definitely, investors come when data exists. Otherwise, it's quite difficult. Pour être à peu près équilibré sur les différentes personnes, je vais vous proposer de continuer en français, moitié en anglais, moitié en français, if you authorize me. Quand on parle de rebond en fait sur l'Afrique du Nord, le rebond, vous avez tous compris que c'était suite à des attentats. On va comparer trois villes, peut-être 3 pays également, avec des infrastructures hôtelières qui sont très différentes. Si on prend juste un chiffre qui est le nombre de chambres pour 100 habitants, on a 21 chambres en Tunisie, 7 au Maroc, 3 en Algérie. Donc l'état d'avancement en quelque sorte sur chacun de ces pays est très différent, avec l'Algérie qui aujourd'hui continue à souffrir dans sa performance commerciale, dans son RevPAR. Et en fait, ce qu'il faut souligner quand même, c'est que les performances qui sont en retard en quelque sorte, hein, qui descendent, ne sont pas nécessairement le cas d'un pays qui se ferme pour des questions de sécurité. J'ai vu les chiffres exceptionnels de Khartoum avec un prix moyen exceptionnel. Ce pays va souffrir parce que malheureusement il affronte de nouveau des problèmes sociaux. Lorsque je vois l'Algérie, le pays certes qui est très focusé sur le business, avec un tourisme qui sera toujours difficile à développer tant qu'il y aura des visas, ce pays souffre aujourd'hui plus par surcapacité hôtelière et donc prépare ainsi son avenir. Mais en ADIS 2014, effectivement, on voit qu'après les difficultés de 2015 et l'image, en quelque sorte, des pays du Maghreb sur un plan international, c'est largement redoré, en quelque sorte, avec ces 2 pays, Tunisie et Maroc, qui sont revenus sur les bonnes tendances. Si on rentre dans le détail du Maroc, on va analyser 4 villes sur lesquelles on a suffisamment de data pour les analyser. En commençant par Tanger, je vais juste donner une anecdote. Tanger, ce fut ma première étude de marché pour un développement hôtelier, et en l'occurrence, on est aujourd'hui dans un Movenpick. C'était une des premières marques hôtelières au Maroc, suite à la privatisation du Malabata. Et donc, il y a une trentaine d'années, il y avait un premier Movenpick. J'espère que Movenpick n'attendra pas tous les 30 ans pour faire un nouvel hôtel, mais ça a été un petit peu un précurseur qui aujourd'hui, effectivement, se concentre sur une clientèle très saisonnière quand on parle de loisirs et qui se développe avec un certain nombre de belles marques hôtelières. En ce qui concerne le business, on parlait de l'automobile tout à l'heure, qui est effectivement le hub industriel d'exportation au Maroc. Casablanca, je parlais de surcapacité, c'est bien la surcapacité qui ralentit un petit peu son activité en 2018. Et enfin, Marrakech et Agadir, qui sont 2 destinations très différentes et en même temps très, très comparables, parce que toutes les 2 s'appuient sur essentiellement une clientèle de loisirs, presque exclusivement pour Agadir, avec une saisonnalité avec aucune saisonnalité pratiquement. Pareil pour Marrakech en termes de saisonnalité, même quand il fait 45 degrés, les hôtels se remplissent tout de même sur Marrakech, avec bien entendu sur Marrakech, et on en est l'exemple aujourd'hui, d'une grosse clientèle MICE, de séminaires-congrès. Si on rentre un petit peu dans les chiffres, on observe que sur Marrakech, effectivement, comme Robin le disait tout à l'heure, on a une propension à tirer les prix vers le haut qui donne des niveaux de prix moyens absolument exceptionnels et des taux d'occupation qui restent extrêmement raisonnables sur une destination où, malgré tout, on est sur 2 marchés, MICE et loisirs. Agadir a des taux d'occupation exceptionnels tirés par le all-inclusive. Tous les hôtels ne sont pas en all-inclusive. Hein. Si je vois les Sofitel ou autres maisons blanches qui sont des petits boutiques hôtels, les Sofitel ne sont pas en all-inclusive et permettent de tirer les prix moyens vers le haut. Mais globalement, la destination aujourd'hui je vais oser dire qu'elle souffre un petit peu par cette concentration d'all inclusive qui rend difficile en quelque sorte l'augmentation des prix moyens. Enfin, Casablanca a une bonne position sur les prix moyens et sur les taux d'occupation, même si cette monoclientèle business, pratiquement, même si la ville est magnifique, la clientèle est essentiellement business. Cette monoclientèle business rend difficile, même pour les produits prestigieux, comme la Tour du Sofitel, comme le Four Seasons qu'on a cité tout à l'heure, rend l'évolution des prix moyens difficile. Quand on parle de Casablanca, on ne peut pas s'empêcher de faire une petite anecdote sur ces grandes marques financières. D'ailleurs, un groupe hôtelier principal a développé il a appuyé son développement grâce à la bourse de Casablanca. Et ces grandes marques sont visibles en quelque sorte dans la stratégie sud-sud du Maroc et on les rencontre sur un certain nombre de pays subsahariens d'Afrique, essentiellement francophone pour l'instant. Casablanca, bon, je l'ai cité tout à l'heure, hein, c'est bien une ville qui aujourd'hui souffre par une capacité de produits neufs qui arrivent sur le marché, qui structurent le marché, neufs d'ailleurs, ou réhabilitation, hein, comme le Tivoli qui est maintenant géré par Barcelo, et qui entrave un petit peu, qui limite un petit peu l'évolution du RevPAR. Mais je voudrais dire que c'est une difficulté de RevPAR qui est momentanée, la ville se structurant. Si on regarde l'Algérie, aujourd'hui a des fortes difficultés à maintenir sa fréquentation, même si, comme on le voyait déjà dans les slides de Robin, on a la capacité, avec des produits hôteliers de qualité, sur Alger, mais sur un certain nombre d'autres villes. L'avantage sur cette capitale, sur cette ville, c'est que les prix moyens sont déjà, en quelque sorte, bien positionnés, ce qui permet une perspective d'avenir effectivement encourageante. Alors certes, la fréquentation n'est pas au rendez-vous pour des questions de développement de nouveaux projets, mais je voudrais dire que c'est certainement un passage momentané, même si ce momentané peut durer encore quelques années, parce que dans nos études récemment faites sur l'Algérie, il y a encore dans le pipeline quelques beaux projets qui vont s'ouvrir, au moins sur Alger et sur un certain nombre d'autres grandes villes du pays. Les grandes marques qui sont présentes aujourd'hui sur le pays, pour moi, sont le reflet, en quelque sorte, d'une meilleure résilience dans la performance hôtelière. Ces grandes marques, non seulement utilisant leurs réseaux commerciaux, mais imposant en quelque sorte aux propriétaires des régimes de rénovation, de maintien des produits qui sont certainement la meilleure recette en quelque sorte de résilience de la performance dans le futur. La Tunisie, enfin, Tunisie qui a subi, je crois, je pense que c'est le seul pays au monde qui ait pu subir autant d'attaques. Je ne parle pas bien entendu de la révolution, mais qui a quand même bien perturbé le pays au début de la décennie, mais surtout, en une année 2015, avoir 4 attentats successifs, c'est quelque chose d'exceptionnel. Nous, on en a 2,5 en France, et ça nous a déjà bien perturbé pendant 2 ans. Et effectivement, c'est bien un délai de réaction beaucoup plus long que la Tunisie a subi pour retrouver ses parts de marché et redonner en quelque sorte une image de sécurité, faire revenir la clientèle touristique sur le pays. Donc, le pays avait déjà commencé à retrouver une fréquentation élevée en 2017. 2018 a été une vraie explosion, hein, la performance a beaucoup augmenté. Pays qui reste malgré tout sur on va dire, sur un produit essentiellement balnéaire, sur un produit très loisir, très touristique, mis à part Tunis, où effectivement on a un petit peu de clientèle business. Pays qui avait été précurseur d'ailleurs pour importer le savoir-faire français en matière de thalassothérapie, qui permet de désaisonnaliser une destination, peut-être plus que le thermalisme d'ailleurs que j'ai entendu ce matin, mais qui malgré tout, malgré ces quelques efforts, reste très, on va dire très saisonnier et avec une perspective de retrouver sa place dans l'échiquier mondial du tourisme grâce à des efforts de rénovation qui sont en cours actuellement dans ce pays. Voilà, pour résumer, une destination Afrique qui voit une évolution de la demande de façon significative. Il est évident que la sécurité reste la condition pour continuer ce développement et voir les marques s'épanouir et se développer. Le Nigeria, c'est vrai que c'est une des rares fois où l'hôtellerie est toujours liée à l'économie, incontestablement. Et c'est vrai que de voir la courbe parallèle du prix du pétrole avec celui de la fréquentation et du RevPAR des hôtels au Nigeria souligne bien en quelque sorte cette dépendance à l'économie d'un point de vue international. Le Sénégal et Dakar qui continuent, on va dire, leur parcours de rénovation d'équipements hôteliers, de nouveaux hôtels qui s'ouvrent, et donc une perspective avec les JO de 2022 qui sont extrêmement favorables. L'Éthiopie qui est un cas vraiment à part, hein, avec le soutien des Chinois pour booster leur destination, et une des compagnies aériennes les plus prisées actuellement et qui font bien leur relais, hein, en plagiant un petit peu la stratégie de la RAM qui effectivement irrigue largement l'Afrique également. Excellente performance donc sur le Rwanda. L'Égypte qui a des double-digit progression, mais dû essentiellement effectivement à un gouffre dont ils sont en train de sortir. Et l'Afrique du Nord qui dispose de beaucoup de potentiel, qui dispose maintenant de beaucoup de data également pour faire venir les investisseurs. Et chacun des trois pays a bien des spécificités. Marrakech étant une vitrine absolument, une marque, je voudrais dire, et une vitrine absolument exceptionnelle dans ce développement touristique du continent. Je reste à vos dispositions si vous aviez des questions, en anglais pour Robin, en français pour moi. Merci beaucoup pour votre attention.